Camping is usually a fun time for families, couples and friends to explore the wilderness whilst enjoying themselves throughout the summer holidays. However, sometimes these vacations into the wild can turn into terrifying moments that can change people's lives forever. From bizarre UFO sightings and sounds in the night to encounters with serial killers. These are 5 true horror camping stories. Story number 1. A few years back we were doing a massive survey in the middle of nowhere in the interior of British Columbia. All the crew had gone home and it was just my boss and myself left for a few days to follow up and confirm some coordinates and finish some mapping. We head out from the motel an hour or so into the bush, middle of nowhere along deactivated logging roads. Closest town is miles and miles away. We hike out to this one area we had found a site a few weeks previously. For some reason, the whole area just felt off. So we get down to business, and about 50 minutes after being hunched over mapping, there is this weird, deafening whomp sound, like I could feel pressure on my ears. I immediately looked at my boss, about 20 feet away, and he is white as a ghost staring back at me. Standing, it fucking happens again. Whomp, ear pressure and chest pressure, like I was just squeezed. Chills all over my body and every hair is standing on end. My boss just looks at me and says, "Let's go." We grab all of our stuff and speed hike back to the truck. We never discussed it. Story number 2, The Whistling Marine. Just a few weeks ago we were on a road trip from British Columbia to San Diego and we came upon a campsite just outside of Crescent City, California. We drove through one side of the campground, which was relatively empty, and I noticed a few scattered tents, but nobody close to the location we ended up picking. We had tons of space. We wanted an early night, so I started a fire while my girlfriend started cooking. We ate, had a few beers, and by 9 p.m. we climbed up to our rooftop tent with our dog. I had a rough time sleeping. I woke up a few times, but finally fell into a decent sleep. In the pitch black, with all of our tent windows and canvases closed, I was awoken at 1 a.m. by someone whistling outside of our tent the tune "When the Saints Come Marching In." After a few minutes of this repetitive whistling, I nudged my girlfriend, who awoke and was obviously freaked out as well. The whistling then turned to chanting things like, "When you sleep here, you disrespect me, and when you disrespect me, you disrespect the US Marines." The person would then start spelling out words like FLEE. The verbiage and tone kept getting more aggressive, so we decided we had to make a move. I slowly unzipped the tent while our guard dog was snoring and got my head out of the tent. I took a few seconds to let my eyes adjust and figure out where this person was. I felt more confident once my eyes adjusted to the light, so I climbed down and the girlfriend passed me the dog, and she climbed down too. We flipped the tent up without securing it and we jumped into a truck while the person was still whistling. We then left in a hurry to a motel in Crescent City. Who was that man? And the next morning we drove back to get a few belongings that weren't in the truck, and a family who had been camping a few sites over said it went on for another 2 to 3 hours, and it was the scariest thing their family had ever experienced. Story number 3. When I was about 18, me and some friends took a road trip, about 7 hours or so, down to the Apalachicola National Forest near Tallahassee, Florida. We were going to do a little car camping, drink a few ice-cold natty lights, 18-year-old stuff. As such, we didn't want to be bothered by any park rangers, so we drove way deep into the woods. Got there, set up a camp, drank some beers, and me and a guy decided to do a little exploring. So we walked about 100 yards from our site back to the main road. Saw another path directly across from us and started walking. Immediately we started seeing signs that someone had lived there for a while. Big bags of trash and stuff like that. Should have been a huge red flag to turn around. But 18, nothing could hurt us. So we get to this campsite of an older white guy living out of his van. Clothesline strung up, coolers placed around it, and a big gorgeous dog. I think it might have been a golden retriever. We tried to back out, but he sees us and starts talking. He's friendly enough, asks us where we're from, tells us about some cool spots to check out in the park, and we end up chatting for 10 minutes and going on our way. I kept thinking to myself what it was that he gave directions in steps, not yards or miles. Guy always seemed to be off balance. Not stumbling drunk, but like he was walking on a balance beam, swaying side to side. Oh, and he was super excited to talk about national parks and forests where we were from. Okay, camping part over. We went back to our tents. Fast forward 2 months, somebody calls me late at night and tells me to turn on the TV to the news. I oblige. I see an old dude with a van. You see where this is headed, but I didn't. So I get pissed at my friend for waking me up. No, watch! And then I see the golden retriever, and it all clicks. What the frig? That man's name was Gary Michael Hilton, convicted of at least 4 murders. He kidnapped and murdered a girl in Blood Mountain, Georgia, an older couple in the Pittsburgh, North Carolina, and a girl in the Apalachicola at that campsite not long after we left. Yes, the very same places he'd been talking to us about. Obviously we called the cops, and they put us in touch with the FBI, and we got flown down to take investigators to the campsite. Point out every spot we saw anything, tell them exactly what he told us, and show them the places he described to us. I didn't find out until after the trial, but apparently they found what appeared to be a partially destroyed human finger bone in an area near the site. Story number 4. My family and I were camping on a lake in central Texas on a week with very few people around. Our spot was on the edge of the campsite to the woods and very close to the edge of the lake. We were playing Pictionary by the campfire the first night we were there when I see a light go by over the lake. I didn't think much of it and was still focusing on the game when another went by at the same speed following the same line. At that point I felt a little strange, but still wasn't too worried about it. After that another went by, and now I pointed out to my dad, who said he noticed it as well. We walked out past the campfire and campground lights to get a better view of what these were. They continued to fly over the lake, going the same speed and staying the exact same distance from each other. They were reddish yellow orbs, and there was no sound coming from them. Now my whole family is watching in awe and disbelief. After about 15 go by, the last one was chased by a white ball of light that was much closer than the rest. We didn't talk much about it after discussing what it could be, but when we got back home from the trip, my mum looked up and saw that people in a town a few miles from my campsite reported seeing the same thing exactly the way we saw it. Story number 5. I once went camping up in Allegheny National Forest. Me and some buddies were all sitting around a fire bullshitting. As it got a bit later, we kept hearing things landing on the ground all around us. There were rocks being thrown at our tents and towards the fire. Nothing too absurd. Could have been some hooligans at a nearby campsite. But looking around the area, we saw nothing. Anyway, it eventually stopped, and we went to our tents. A few hours later, we heard this ear-piercing noise that sounded like a woman screaming while running through our campsite, but much raspier. It was a pretty unsettling experience, and needless to say, nothing came of it.